Alrighty. Okay, so well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out, especially on a day like today. It's great to see everybody. I really appreciate the turnout.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. That's the bigger point.
Well, and that's the main thing. That's the main thank you I also want to give this guy Stan for allowing me to take the time to do this. I was talking to Maureen and Karen. It's perfect that it's raining. We all often try to meet inside anyway when it's raining. So here we are in the rain. I've been dreaming about giving this lecture for a long time now, and it really is gratifying to have a group of friends finally that I can give it to. And I really appreciate those people who have come from long distances as well today. I love this picture. I found this picture stolen from the New York Times article about the painting. Clearly, it's like in a workshop at the Museum of Modern Art getting clean or study or something like that. But I just love being able to kind of see it naked like that. And we're going to kind of strip it down today again, today as well. So maybe it's kind of fitting. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself. Most of you know that I'm Edward Hartley. I want to tell you just a little bit about myself to give you an idea of why you might, listen to a word I have to say. Today I have a master's degree in art history from the University of Virginia. I have 15 years experience teaching art history at the college level, both in the classroom and online. When I was in college and when I was in graduate school, I wasn't really into Impressionism, wasn't really into Van Gogh. Didn't just like him. Just that wasn't my thing. I think I was more into the angst of abstract expressionism, right? But when I finally started teaching back in the mid-O's, teaching survey courses, of course I had to teach. I had to cover Van Gogh, and of course I had to teach, the most beloved painting in the world, right? And so the night before I'm putting together my lecture on post-impressionism, all I've got to work with is just a little reproduction in the survey textbook. Of course, I'd seen the painting many times in the Museum of Modern Art, but this night before the lecture, I'm just kind of looking, using this little reproduction in the book and going online and finding out everything I can that I need to know about Van Gogh and the Starry Night that I didn't know already. But it wasn't actually until the next day when I got to the classroom and threw the painting up on the big screen that I actually did a double take. I'll never forget, to this day, I literally did a double take. Looked at it, looked again, and recognized really that the brightest star in the Starry Night must actually be Venus. I'm a little bit of an astronomy buff. I took astronomy classes in college, and I always kind of like to be aware of what planets are visible at any given time. Like, for instance, now Jupiter and Mars are both visible. And right around this time, when I was teaching these classes, I was living on Johns Island, out in the country, outside of Charleston, and incredible night skies. No light pollution from the cities. First time I really lived in the country like that. And one morning I got a photograph of the crescent moon and Venus with a really basic, digital camera. I still can't believe I got it. And I took it right around the same time. So when I looked at the painting, on the big screen, bigger than that, I'm going to show it to you bigger as we go along. I was just like, Venus was in my head, and I was like, there's all of the stars, as you can kind of see here. All the stars in the painting are, smallish and yellowish, except for this one right here, which is, quite bright and close to the horizon. And so I was like, oh my God, have I discovered something, right, about the most famous painting in the world that nobody knows, And I had visions of, writing about it and getting a full professorship and buy a house, right? So it turns out that people did know about it. In fact, two scholars working independently of each other in the 1980s, a man named Albert Boeing, art historian at UCLA, and Charles Whitney, an astrophysicist at Harvard, Did independent research to find out whether Venus was actually visible in the south of France in the summer of 1889. Boehm, being an art historian, went to the physics department at UCLA. Whitney was already in his physics department. They were like, let's do the numbers. We know when this painting was painted. It's painted between June 16th and June 18th, 1889. Vincent writes a letter to his sister Will on the 16th, doesn't mention this painting, mentions it in a letter to his brother Theo on the 18th, and does mention this painting. Says, I've got a new starry sky, as he called it. Never actually calls it the starry night, calls it a night study, a night effect, and a starry sky. But we know, of course, as the starry night. And so they plugged in the numbers, and they found out that yes, indeed, Venus was visible in the south of France in the summer of 1889. And Vincent actually mentions it in a couple of his letters. In one of his letters specifically, he says, which I'll show you an excerpt from in a minute. He says that he sees the morning star first thing in the morning from his window in the asylum. So it was known, but it's not really well known, I don't think. I mean, you guys knew that the brightest star was actually Venus. Anybody? Be honest? Yeah, nice. Not too many, right? It certainly wasn't mentioned in the little, 2 paragraphs on the painting in the survey textbook I was using. If it's mentioned in books on Van Gogh and the Starry Night, it's really kind of mentioned in passing. That's kind of a fun fact. But as far as I'm concerned, it's integral to the proper interpretation of the Starry Night. So I didn't discover Venus, but in my research, I learned a lot about Van Gogh. I learned a lot about the Starry Night. I've been obsessed with it now this was back in 2005 when I taught that first survey class. So I did learn a lot, and what I have learned, and which I'm going to try to tell you about today, is that I believe that the standard interpretation of the Starry Night is wrong. So there you go. The standard interpretation of the Starry Night is that it is a composite image from Vincent's imagination. Those are the key terms that all of the scholars use. That he took certain elements from one painting, took another element from another painting, took another element from a drawing that he did, perhaps, and then put them together in an imaginative painting from his imagination. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So first we need to put it in context of Vincent's life and work. I would say that there are probably 4 things that most everybody knows about Vincent van Gogh. First thing everybody knows about him probably is that he was crazy. Right? He spent time in an insane asylum. He cut off his own ear, and he quite possibly committed suicide. The second thing that most people know about Vincent is that he wrote a lot of letters. A lot of his letters survive, right? About 1,000 of his letters. Most of them to his brother Theo, or Teo. I say Theo, of course, probably most of us do. But and then the last thing, and then that leads to the third thing that we know about Vincent is that he was financially supported by Theo throughout his painting career. And the fourth thing that everybody knows about Vincent van Gogh, of course, is the paintings. They know about the Starry Night, they know about the sunflowers, they know about the irises, portraits of Roulin and his wife, and so forth. But so beyond that, you probably don't know. Most of the casual, even the fan, probably doesn't know exactly where the paintings fit in. So we're going to, put the Starry Night in that context. Brief little bio here. Vincent van Gogh was born in 1853 in Holland. First jobs are in art dealerships. Doesn't really work out. He works in The Hague. His uncle, Sent, was in the business. And Vincent gets a job working for Goupil AC, Goupil and Company. First in The Hague, then in London, then in Paris. Doesn't work out. Vincent was almost certainly manic depressive. And there's can't remember where I read it, but one biographer writes that it might have been I can't remember, but writes that Vincent would discourage people from buying the prints that they were interested in, right? And all his life he was kind of in people's face. We'll talk about his relationship with Gauguin as well. So it didn't work out in the art dealerships. He tries to be a preacher briefly, like his father. His father was a Protestant preacher. That didn't work out. He had too much missionary zeal, the preachers said, and you can imagine him saying, but I'm trying to act like Jesus. And they're like, exactly, right? But that true story, it didn't work out. And so finally, in 1880, at the age of 27, he has sort of an epiphany and decides to become I want to say painter, but first he wants to be a draftsman. He wants to do illustrations for illustrated journals, which were obviously hugely popular in the 19th century. Obviously, and that's what he starts doing. He starts as a draftsman and becomes a painter. In 1880, at the age of 27, the first thing he does is he moves back home. So he's kind of ahead of his time in that regard, right? Moves back home for a couple of years with his parents. Moves to The Hague. Gets in all kind of trouble in The Hague. Moves back home, and his family's now moved to another town in Holland named Newton. And then in 1886, he moves to Paris. His younger brother Theo. I think there's a common misconception that Theo was older, because he was more responsible and he was the benefactor. He was Vincent's younger brother, but he's working in the same art gallery system now in Paris that Vincent had been working in at UPL. And so Vincent goes to Paris in 1886, and that's where he's first exposed to Impressionism, and his palette just explodes with color, obviously. And then in 1888, he moves to the south of France in February of 1888 for the sunlight to paint Impressionist paintings, style paintings with the sunlight. February 1888, and he's going to die in July of 1890. And all of the paintings that you know about by Vincent van Gogh, except for the Potato Eaters, so 1885. All the paintings that you know about Vincent come from these last 2.5 years of his life. It's remarkable. The sunflowers are from the summer of 1888. The Starry Night, of course, is from the summer of 1889, and so forth. I brought an outline, but I forgot to pull it out. Okay, so let me see what's next. I'm sorry. Okay, that's right. So Gauguin comes down to visit him, obviously, famously, in October of 1888.